What's up everybody, I'm Hoops and Hip Hop, and welcome to what is for sure going to be an interesting video to say the least. So, I kind of needed a more chill, relaxed video to kind of bridge the gap between my two bigger uploads today, and I had the idea of kind of discussing what Pokemon I would cut from the Sword and Shield Pokedex if I had that power, since obviously that's been in the news lately. Ironically enough, Birdkeeper Toby did this exact same video and also encouraged other people to do the same, even though that's not where I got the idea. I kind of just thought of it on my own. So, I mean, that's essentially what we're going to be doing today. If I had to pick which Pokemon made the Sword and Shield Dex, which ones would I pick? Now, in comparison to Toby's video, if you saw it, his video was much more broad and kind of just looked at it from a different angle than I'm going to be looking at it. I decided I wanted to give every Pokemon their fair shot and kind of give them a chance to tell me that they deserve to be in the Pokedex per se, but that's not without having rules in terms of how many Pokemon can get in, because I am going to cut exactly half of all the Pokemon prior to Generation 8, which is basically 404, so we're going to keep 405, and then all of the Galar Pokemon would obviously be included, which would overall give us about 500 out of 900 Pokemon, which I think is pretty reasonable. So we're basically in this video just going to be going through the Pokedex kind of really quick, going to be doing like a flash fire type style. And I'm going to go over like specific Pokemon I cut, specific Pokemon I saved, and tell you guys why I saved or cut those Pokemon. But for the Pokemon that I cut that I don't get a chance to talk about, the general rule that, or the general reason for all of them that they all kind of shared, is basically the fact that A, they didn't really have a reason in my mind to be included. There was not something specific that made them deserving of being in this specific Pokedex. And then on top of that, they were kind of like the more underwhelming or forgettable Pokemon, if you will, for a lack of a better term, that I felt like most people wouldn't be too upset by if they were cut, so I kind of tried to play to everyone's opinion as well as kind of just like looking at it from a more like, does this Pokemon deserve to be in this game? So with all that being said, why don't we go ahead and just get into it. What's up guys? How's it going? I've not seen you on camera in a while, but yeah, we're just going to go ahead and go through the Pokedex and get started, and we've already wasted too much time, so why don't we go ahead and get into it. First up, we've got the starter lines, and we already know that Charizard and therefore his family is going to be in the game thanks to the trailers, and because of that, I believe all of the other Kanto starters should make it into the game, because you can't really have one without having all of them. However, I will say, since we're talking about starters, that all of the other starter lines are cut. They are just gone, and I hate to do it because obviously starter Pokemon are special, but the reason why I did is because I wanted to preserve the variety of Pokemon you're able to find in the wild, and you're not going to find starter Pokemon in the wild anyway, so I felt like they were kind of an easier choice to cut in terms of getting rid of a good handful of Pokemon, but not really like getting rid of ones that you would see anyway. So it was kind of a nice balance there. Moving on though, just kind of scrolling through specific Pokemon I cut. I did cut Spearow and Fearow just because I decided to keep Pidgey and Pidgeotto, so I kind of did a trade-off sort of situation there. Once again, I kept Sandshrew for the Alola form thing. I also kept both of the Nido lines because they evolve into Nidoking and Nidoqueen, and that kind of speaks for itself. Plus, they also don't really get to be featured that much in national or regional dexes. Like they haven't really featured that often in a lot of Pokemon games, which sucks because they're cool Pokemon, and that kind of introduced a silver lining to me with this kind of experiment, and that's that even though, yeah, we're getting Pokemon that are being cut, and that sucks, and obviously we would love to have all of them, I think this kind of shakeup gives other Pokemon that don't usually get to shine a chance to shine, and that's kind of what I discovered while doing this, and so that makes me excited, and like I said, just gives this whole situation a little bit of a silver lining, gives you something to look forward to, even though it's overall kind of disappointing. I also kept Poliwag and their line, because if you didn't know, it's either Poliwag or Poliwhirl is the favorite Pokemon of series creator Satoshi Tajiri, and so I feel like as an Easter egg and also as like an homage to like the god himself, these guys need to be in the game, so I went ahead and kept them. I did cut Tentacool and Tentacruel because I saw a funny comment on one of my videos saying as long as Zubat and Tentacruel aren't there, then I'm fine, so I went ahead and axed that. However, I do believe I kept Zubat just because Crobat is awesome, and so that kind of saved him there. I also cut Kangaskhan. This was an interesting one. I decided to cut Kangaskhan because I didn't really, once again, feel like it had a reason to be in the Galar Dex. And then I also, on top of that, it went with the philosophy of kind of shaking things up, because we know that Mega Evolutions aren't going to be in these games. They're removed altogether. And so that provides an opportunity for something to kind of replace Kangaskhan in the meta, so to speak, because Kangaskhan, at least until it got nerfed, was extremely, like, powerful with its Mega Evolution, was extremely used. And I believe kind of removing Kangaskhan and replacing it with something else is kind of following that idea of just letting other Pokemon have a chance to shine, especially in the meta. So that's one I cut, and I felt like, even though obviously we'd love to have Kangaskhan, it makes a lot of sense. I also cut Jynx, because Jynx has obviously always been a controversial Pokemon, and I believe that Game Freak will take any opportunity they can to not have to feature this Pokemon given the controversy, and so I felt like that was an easy decision there. I kept Lapras, though, for obvious reasons, since it's based on the Loch Ness Monster. I kept the Eevees because, I mean, they're already there in the first place, but then we get to another key point here, and that's the fossil Pokemon. I have cut every single fossil Pokemon from this game, because when it comes to fossil Pokemon, and fossils in general, whenever you find a fossil of a certain species of plant or animal life or whatever, it's usually kind of like indigenous, I guess, to one very specific location of the world, and you can't really find fossils of that kind, like, all over the place like you would an animal, maybe, for instance. And so for that reason, I decided to cut all the fossils, because it's most likely that Galar's going to have its own fossils, and that kind of just made sense from a logistical standpoint to cut those, and once again, it helps get rid of a good chunk of Pokemon, so that's why I went that route. And then we get to the legendaries, and also I cut most of the legendaries. They're also an easy, like, a disappointing but easy choice, because A, there's a whole lot of them, so if we cut all of them, it gets rid of a good chunk of the Pokedex that we wouldn't be able to keep, or wouldn't be able to catch in the wild anyway, so it preserves the ability to have a great variety of wild Pokemon to catch. However, I did keep a couple of them, because it's been my hope that we'll be able to catch some Pokemon or legendary Pokemon in this game, kind of like in the wild area possibly, or something like that, similar to how we've done in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon and Oraz. I think those particular features in those games were really cool, and I'm hoping they preserve that to some degree here, so I've kept a couple of them that we'll get into as we go along, but for the most part, most of them are cut. But once again, it kind of helps us to preserve the variety of Pokemon we can have in the wild and we can catch, so once again, there's that silver lining. Two of the Pokemon that I did keep were Mew, because Mew's already been confirmed through the Pokeball Go Plus, and then I also kept Mewtwo because it's freaking Mewtwo. Like, Mewtwo is always going to be around. It's kind of the one Pokemon that was like, is basically going to will itself to be included in any type of situation like this. So, Mewtwo is in. Moving on, though, another Pokemon I cut in particular is Sudowoodo, just because I felt like Sudowoodo has its gimmick of, like, faking to be a tree. However, we have not ever seen that in a 3D game, and I just don't know how that would work in a 3D game. I feel like it would be vastly different and not quite as effective compared to the 2D sprite version of that gimmick. And if you include Sudowoodo, like, as a, like, wild Pokemon in the game, that's how you have to do it, and it just didn't really, like, make sense to me, so that's why I went ahead and cut Sudowoodo. I cut Unknown because Unknown has 28 different forms, and if Pokemon's reasoning for cutting so many Pokemon is that there's just too many models to make for all the Pokemon, well, there's 28 models in one Pokemon that you would have to make if you included this Pokemon, so I think it's safe to say that Unknown will be gone. I also cut the Tyrogue family and, like, the Hitmons, because they're obviously, aside from these two, they're all based on, obviously, famous, like, Japanese fighters, and I felt like that didn't really give them a reason to be in Galar, and because we got to cut Pokemon, that was kind of just their axe, their nail in the coffin, so to speak. I kept Miltank because Miltank cows farms obviously makes sense. Unfortunately, we cut all of the legendaries in Johto, though, but obviously Tyranitar's obviously in the game, so that's good. And then another thing I want to mention is that I believe I kept all of the pseudo legendaries. And the reason why I decided to do that is because A, they're powerful Pokemon. People like powerful Pokemon. They're also rare Pokemon, and I feel like finding them in the wild would be really cool. Plus, they do have the distinction of being pseudo-legendaries. They're probably some of the most, like, just cool and interesting Pokemon you can find in the wild. And I thought, once again, for the purpose of, like, just the quality of the Pokedex that you can catch in the wild, the variety, all that different type of stuff, I felt like it was important for them to be there. So that's why I decided to go ahead and include them. I also cut Taillow and Swellow because we already know we have Wingull and Pelipper. They're kind of like counterparts to one another in a way, so I felt like having half of it there makes a lot of sense. The whole Thanos philosophy, if you know what I'm saying. I also cut Masquerain and Surskit. Once again, not really like the most iconic Pokemon ever. I cut Plusle and Minun, and when it comes to them in particular, I kind of had to pick and choose with the Pikachu clones just because there's obviously a lot of them. We have one in every generation, and they do kind of have the edge in terms of being included because they're related to Pikachu, but at the same time, we don't need every single one because that's just like 8 clones of Pikachu, especially because we're going to get another one in Galar, so I kind of just had to pick and choose with them. I kept some of them, I cut some of them, and these were 2 of the ones I cut just because they're not the most memorable, and it's like 2 for the price of 1, so that's why I did that. I also cut Volbeat and Illumise because, like, they're kind of forgettable Pokemon, to be honest. Same thing with Lunatone and Solrock, Baltoy and Claydol. Obviously, you've got the fossils that I cut. Castform is another one that I cut, because most people just don't like Castform. That's a more forgettable choice as opposed to, like, a reasoning type of choice. I also cut Tropius just because it doesn't fit the whole climate, doesn't really work, unfortunately. I tried to keep the Walrein family because I absolutely love Spheal to death, but when I went through the whole Pokedex, cut what I felt really needed to be cut, I still had a bunch more Pokemon I had to cut, and an Ice-type, like, Walrus Pokemon, it kind of just seemed like the natural choice for the setting, so that's why I went that route. I also cut the Gorebyss family, and then I cut basically all the Pokemon from Hoenn, legendary Pokemon from Hoenn, I should say, except for Latias and Latios. Latias and Latios were 2 of the Pokemon that made my cut in terms of the legendary Pokemon I wanted to include, and that's because I felt like they were really good in terms of being Pokemon that could be caught in Galar, because for the most part, when we have seen them, like, in the games, they have been roaming Pokemon that kind of just roam around, and we've even seen them in other games like Black and White 2. They were able to be caught in Black and White 2, probably for that similar reason. So for their roaming nature, and I know I cut, like, I've cut other roaming Pokemon, and I will be doing that, but I just felt like they fit really well, given the Pokemon that they are themselves and their roaming nature, so those were 2 that I felt like I could justify in terms of, like, legendary Pokemon to keep around, so that is why I went with them. I also kept Bidoof because, duh, it's Bidoof, like, how are you not going to include our Lord and Savior into the game? I unfortunately had to cut Spiritomb, just because, once again, I just ended up at a position where I had to cut more Pokemon. I hadn't reached that number of 404, and Spiritomb kind of being a very specialty, gimmicky type of Pokemon that, once again, you find it in the wild, but you don't really find it in the wild at the same time. It's more of an event Pokemon as opposed to just a Pokemon you encounter in the wild, and that was kind of like a big thing for me, is that I wanted to preserve the variety of Pokemon you could catch in the wild, so it really felt like there were as many Pokemon in this game as possible, and so that's kind of just why he got the short end of the stick there. I also cut Finneon and Lumineon because people kind of hate them, even though I personally like them, and there's nothing wrong with these Pokemon, but the community just kind of forgets about them as a whole, so. And then the Lake Trio, Uxie, Azelf, and Mesprit, they're another trio of legendaries I kept in the game for basically the same reason as Latios and Latias, but I could also see just as likely that they're not in the game because they'll be added in Diamond and Pearl remakes, and maybe we'll get, like, the Reggies instead of them or something, I don't know. But just kind of based on my own hunches, that's what I wanted to include, but unfortunately every other legendary in Sinnoh had to be cut. The whole freaking Simi family, or families of families, extended family, I cut them because no one really likes them, sadly. I also cut Pidove and Unfezant and those guys because they're probably the least favorite starting bird, unfortunately. So you gotta do what you gotta do. I also cut Timburr, Gurdurr, and Conkeldurr, or Conkeldurr, because, I mean, frankly, I just don't think they're very good Pokemon. We also have Machop, Machoke, and Machamp, which are essentially their counterparts, and I don't think we need two versions of the same Pokemon in the game, so decided to go ahead and cut them. I got rid of Darumaka and Darmanitan because not only did I feel like not too many people would be upset, but also there's the multiple form thing, and I kind of just felt like that gave it a little bit more justification for being cut. We've obviously got the fossils that are cut. I kept Zora and Zoroark because they're classic Pokemon that I think have been enough of an icon for the Pokemon franchise that they can end up making it in, even if by the skin of their teeth. I also had to cut Larvesta and Volcarona. They're not legendaries, and I really wanted to keep them in, but once again, they're not really a Pokemon you find in the wild per se, even though you kind of do. They're more of an event Pokemon, so once again, that goes to the whole variety of the Pokedex situation. And then the last legendaries that I decided to keep in the game from previous generations were the Swords of Justice. First off, the reason why I kept them is because I just felt like they were a good fit. They're, once again, at least in Black and White 2, I believe, they're kind of like roaming Pokemon where you have to go to a specific location and then they kind of just appear out of the shadows. I felt like that kind of made them a good fit, but then I didn't even realize until right before I started to record this video that they're literally called the Swords of Justice, which makes them an absolute perfect fit for these games, and they're also based on the Three Musketeers from, France, which is obviously right next door, so I think they fit really well. I'm not going to be able to include Keldeo because, yeah, it would make sense to include all four, but Keldeo is a mythical, so it kind of detaches itself anyway. So these are the three that I went with, and I think they would fit really well in the Galar region. But I cut everything else, unfortunately, for reasons we've already discussed, and now we're on to Kalos. But one I did cut was the Vivillon family, because Vivillon obviously has a million different forms with its patterns, and I don't think Game Freak wants to go to that length in particular, especially with one Pokemon, so it got cut. However, I did keep Aegislash and its family, because obviously it's the Sword and Shield Pokemon, like it has to be there. And I know Lunatone and Solrock didn't get into Sun and Moon, but I'm saying to heck with Game Freak's logic, they need to be in the game, so they are in the game. I did, however, cut Binacle and Barbaracle, because I think they're a monstrosity of a Pokemon. It looks like, in my opinion, Binacle and Barbaracle look like the leftover pieces of like 5 Pokemon that were kind of Frankenstein together into one Pokemon, and it gives me nightmares, and I don't need to see that in HD on my big screen, so that's not happening. That is not happening. Outside of that, we pretty much end off with the Kalos Pokedex, and we move into Alola. I did end up cutting the Toucannon family because, once again, I felt like I didn't need to have every single starting bird, and they were an easier one to cut because they're more tropical, they don't fit the setting, and we just barely were like exposed to them, so they had enough reasoning to be cut. I did keep Yungoos and Gumshoos, though, just because we don't really know where Yungoos and Gumshoos are originally from, and obviously that means they could be from Galar, so I decided to give them that opportunity. I cut Crabrawler and Crabominable, though, because Crabominable is an abomination, no pun intended, and I also cut Oricorio just for the fact it's a 4-form Pokemon, and I feel like Game Freak is going to avoid that sort of thing. I cut Comfey, Oranguru, and Passimian because they all felt like they were very like Alola specific Pokemon that you wouldn't really find anywhere else. Same thing with Sandygast, Palossand, and Pyukumuku. They all kind of have that very much Hawaiian only type of vibe that you wouldn't really find them anywhere else. And then we get to the real chopping block here, which is all of the legendaries of the Alola region. And if you count the Ultra Beasts as legendaries, which they basically are, then you've got a whole ton of Pokemon that we're cutting here, which is good for the variety of the Pokedex, like I've been saying. As long as we have a really good variety of wild Pokemon we can catch, I don't think people will notice it as much, and this kind of helps us do that. So these guys are kind of like our sacrificial lambs that are doing the Lord's work, allowing us to have a really cool Pokedex, even though we're cutting a bunch of Pokemon. And then finally, the last Pokemon that made it into the Pokedex were Meltan and Melmetal. This is kind of obvious because even though they have been in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, they haven't been in a main series Pokemon game yet, and they need to be in a main series Pokemon game one way or the other, and I personally believe that they will have some kind of special role to play when it all comes down to it. So I definitely think they make it into Sword and Shield, but that is pretty much it. I know I didn't get to go into all of the Pokemon. Obviously, there's 809 of them, so we'd be here all day if we did that, but at the same time, I did kind of want to give every single Pokemon the chance to make it in, and the chance to kind of plead its case for inclusion in the game, so that's why I did this the way I did this. And hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully this was fun, and it is purely just for fun. Obviously, like, having all the Pokemon would be amazing, but since we're not, we might as well kind of have some fun with it on the flip side. And we did kind of find some silver linings there in terms of reasons to be excited about this. There's other Pokemon that now have a chance to kind of steal the spotlight, if you will, that haven't had a chance to do that, and I just feel like it's going to provide like some new, fresh perspectives in terms of Pokemon you can use, Pokemon that like can give you a good experience and different things like that. So I think it will provide some positives, some good will come out of it, and yeah, I'm really excited for it. But if you guys did enjoy the video, be sure to give it a like. Let me know down in the comments below which Pokemon you would cut or which Pokemon you would keep if you were in control of this thing for Sword and Shield. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for more Pokemon content every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, including plenty more Pokemon Sword and Shield videos. And also, if you'd like to further support the channel, you can check me out on Spotify, give some of my Pokemon remixes a listen. That directly supports the channel, helps me out a lot, helps production of videos, and it's just greatly appreciated in general. And, because I want to mention this as many times as possible, you can also check me out on Twitter for my Pokemon Sword and Shield giveaway. That's still going on. It will go on until basically the release of the game. You have a chance to win a free copy of either of the games, so all you have to do is follow me and like the tweet to enter, so definitely check that out if you haven't. But with all that being said, I will be back with another video on Saturday, so be sure to hit that notification bell so you can be notified as soon as it goes live. And with all that being said, you know I love you guys, and I will smell you guys later.